All right. Well, welcome, Kathy and Karen, and anyone that's watching today. So, today we are going to discuss the promise of food as medicine and exploring the possibilities of new directions that we can take in our food system. So, my name is Stephanie Spencer, and I've worked as a cardiac RN for 27 years, and I'm now a plant based educator. And I serve on the board of Arkansas Local Food Network in Little Rock, Arkansas. And this is an organization that connects local farmers and with customers with a goal of facilitating a resilient local food system. And it was through ALFN that I discovered Dr. Karen Ballard, who is a soybean farmer growing non-GMO soybeans in Arkansas with a mission to get more Arkansans to actually eat the #1 crop of the state. And so I thought that is a mission that I would like to be involved with. And so one thing led to another, and here we are today. So today you're going to hear about Karen's personal journey involving farming, her personal health, and her concern for her community's health as well. And then we're going to discuss some health aspects of plant-based nutrition and soy in particular with my presentation. And then we're going to wrap it up with the celebrated chef, Kathy Caton Grazzini, who is going to show us some delicious ways to eat soy products. So Karen, go ahead and share your screen, and why don't you get us started?
Hello, everyone. I'm Karen Ballard, and I would like to welcome you to our farm. My husband's family farm has been in production for over 95 years. They actually cleared that land by hand to feed their own family and then some farm animals. And like the U.S. soy producers around the country now, we feed folks around the world. But ironically, we don't eat much of it. We certainly don't eat much of it that's whole. So the goal that I have for participating today is just to share some current information about ancient food. Soy is actually an heirloom food, one of the original heirloom foods, dating back to the 11th century in North China. Populations that consume soy on a regular basis have admirable health profiles. The American diet, not so much. For me either. I didn't eat soy, even though soybeans fields surrounded me, until I met this little guy. I'd like you to meet the Lone Star tick. A few years ago, I began having anaphylaxis and multiple trips to the ER, unexplainable, all different times of the day and night. One of the final episodes, I actually lost my vision on the way to the hospital. My husband told me at that time I was probably pretty close to death. Fortunately, through a great allergist, I was diagnosed with alpha-gal. It's kind of like alpha guy, but alpha-gal. The difference is that it's life-threatening. And I had some choices to make. I could either continue to be sick and possibly lose my life, or I could come to the terms with the fact that alpha-gal means that I was allergic to all mammalian products, including byproducts like dairy. Now, before you get all worried about me and feeling sorry for me, my research has taught me that actually over 50% of folks in the U.S. and around the world have a dairy allergy or lactose intolerant, leading to indigestion, brain fog, all kinds of symptoms, maybe not life-threatening, but certainly not pleasant. So most of you actually probably know someone that also has some diet-related challenges. So I started digging into soy. So how good is it? How much do I need to eat? What do I need to eat? Come to find out, the Good Food Institute states that it's the gold standard for plant protein. It's because soy protein is so high in protein. It's because of its fiber, the digestible carbohydrates, it's nutrient rich, a good source of calcium. But how do you cook it? I didn't know. So I started with a friend and doing cooking marathons in my home kitchen, everything from soy milk to tofu to steaming edamame to just cooking soybeans as a vegetable to hummus. I found that there are some tricks to the trade because of soy's high protein content. It does require longer cooking times, but the even better news is that because of its high protein content, it's very freezer friendly. And so you can pre-cook and put it in small packages to incorporate in all kinds of ways. So what does Southern soy food look like? Well, I started with, my mama's cookbook and my family cookbooks. And so for me, it started out with soybeans and ham hocks and soybeans and rice and soy bread pudding and all kinds of things that taught me that there was a little more to this being than I had ever imagined, and that I probably was not going to sacrifice much. I went on to make my own soy milk and tofu and use it as vegetable sides, which actually became center of the plate protein entrees. But I still miss my chicken enchiladas, and so I still was a little whiny. But then I discovered that tofu over in the dairy case, the thing that I thought I would never eat, was actually going to change my life again. And it did. And I was so excited because I learned that I could take that tofu and make soy sour cream and soy cream cheese. And so my spinach lasagna was now creamy and available. And when I threw a few black soybeans into my salsa, my family salsa recipe, I found that it could be a center of the plate entree. It couldn't get any better than that. But then that caused me to say, well, so what is on the inside? What's in that package? And it was amazing, I will say. So for the first time really in my life, I really looked at a nutrition label, and I looked at it in comparison. I think, now that in retrospect, why would I look at a nutrition label? The numbers were meaningless, but they're not meaningless when you compare them. And so as you can see, there are differences here in a soy sour cream and a dairy sour cream. The calories, certainly that's nice, but what really resonated with me was the fat, the saturated fat, because I have a family history of stroke, diabetes, and heart disease. And I've struggled with high cholesterol for 20 years. And all of a sudden I look and see there's no cholesterol in soy. And that meant something, even though I knew that before in my research. When I really saw it laid out like this, I started to understand why I was seeing a loss of weight. So what kind of soy foods, why did soy foods change things for me? At the end of COVID, I went to have a checkup. I hadn't been to the doctor in a couple of years. And my technician said, "What have you done during COVID?" And I said, "What do you mean?" And she said, "Well, one, you've lost 15 pounds. Two, your bone density is stable for the first time in 10 years. And the third is that your cholesterol has dropped 20 points. And I was stunned too, because I had continued to eat the same quantity of foods, but the outcome was really different. That causes you to pause. This is our fields looking from the back porch, and to reflect. And I shared with my husband, I really never knew that soy or food in general could actually affect my health. What I ate could actually change or reverse a condition. And he looked at me in amusement and said, "Everybody knows that, Karen. Everybody knows that." And I hated, except we've been married for a very long time, so I really didn't hate. But I did kind of hate that I had to admit to him, no, I really did not know that. I must have heard that. I've taken a few health courses over my years. But honestly, I didn't believe it if I did hear it. It also caused me to reflect on how things have changed in the Delta since I grew up here. Some changes have been very good. Other changes not so good. One of the not so good things is the pervasive epidemic of childhood obesity that surrounds us in the Delta. It's stunning and it's scary. And our kids are graduating from high school pre-diabetic, at high cholesterol, with all kinds of early onset healthcare problems. It caused me to pause too and think, if it worked for me, what does this mean? So I've always worked with kids. So kids have always been interested in their food and what grows around them. So I thought, what if I shared what it tastes like cooked? So I have done sensory evaluations as well as just taste testing at events with everyone from second graders to folks as old as me. And the results, honestly, have been surprising. The high schoolers who went through very sophisticated sensory testing on all levels actually loved the salsa. So again, what if? Could substituting a high fiber, high protein, nutrient dense food in the school cafeteria program across this country, do you think it could improve the health of our children, of which 2/3 of them consume or 2/3 of them consume most of their meals in that cafeteria? This is a question that fortunately I'm getting to explore with other farmers and schools and community members. There are a lot of health claims about soy foods, but to me, it's all boils down to the nutrition facts. Just all you have to do is compare. Does it matter that we have high fiber in our diet? Well, come to find out, it matters. Does it matter that we have a complete plant-based protein with no cholesterol? Does it fill you up, not leave you hungry at the end of the day? Well, that too. But most of all, do soybeans taste great in an American diet? And come to find out, I've surveyed over 1,500 people in the last several years, from second graders to people as old as me, and they're amazed. They're amazed, number one, that they taste good. They're amazed at what their nutritional profile is, and they didn't know any more than I did. So last, I would just say, one of the things I've learned that I've been sharing with folks and want to share with you today is that there are so many ways that you can incorporate this ancient, abundant, nutritious food into your American diet in ways that, yes, do affect your health. It's been an amazing journey for this little farm girl for the last couple of years. And it's something that I do believe will add years to my life. And that's something I want to share with others. And it's funny, Stephanie and Kathy and I come from very different places. The thing that brought us together is that we all love soybeans. The second thing is that we all have our own stories, and we also really want to contribute to a better health going forward for everybody, not just us. And this is a joy to have the capacity to share this story.
Resume. All right. Well, thank you, Karen, for sharing your story. It is such a unique story. And I'm so impressed. I'll tell you, I'm a microgreens farmer, and I just set up my little stand at the farmer's market. But Karen sells her crop overseas. She is a hardcore farmer, unlike myself. So yes, I'm very impressed with her story. So yeah, let's talk about my story. I'm a farmer, a nurse, and a chef walk into a bar. I'm not a comedian, so I'm just doing the best I can here. Let's see. Okay, there we go. Well, let me tell you about my story, a little bit about myself. So again, I'm Stephanie Spencer, and I've been a cardiac RN for 27 years. And I used to run an outpatient heart failure clinic. Whoops, there we go, for about 17 years. And this is what these outpatient clinics look like. And so I would give my patients a lot of hardcore IV medicine to get the fluid out of their lungs and out of their legs and just try to keep them out of the hospital. That was my job, because heart failure admissions are the #1 expense to the Medicare program. And after a while, it just kind of got to me, honestly, because no matter what I do, I can't change the trajectory of these patients' disease process. There's a 50% mortality rate 5 years after time of diagnosis with heart failure. And no matter how closely I monitored their symptoms and pulled the excess fluid off, I couldn't change the underlying trajectory. And eventually over time, I just kind of got a little bit burnt out. And, the patients just never stop coming when you're working in cardiology. They stretch out to the curb. And you see, almost all heart failure comes about as a result of either heart attacks or high blood pressure. And what are heart attacks caused by? Usually heart attacks are caused by diabetes. What is diabetes caused by? Type 2 diabetes is caused by the food we eat. So is high blood pressure, all the things. So I always had this feeling that there's this underlying thing that I just can't get to with my patients to make them better. And honestly, in medical school or in college, like we never learn in the medical field, nurses and doctors don't learn much at all about nutrition. And so we're just kind of shooting in the dark, just like everyone else, because we have no formal training. It's not really taken all that seriously in the medical profession. We focus a lot on medications and invasive procedures. So, by 2019, I had decided to try something completely different. I was just ready for a change. And I started a microgreens business. And I wasn't plant-based at the time, but I just wanted to work more with food and health. But it was kind of ironic, around that same time, my husband came home from the doctor one day. Well, let me back up. My husband started complaining. He had all these bumps in his abdomen. And the doctor had said in the past that they're just fatty tumors. They're not cancer, not to worry about it. But Paul started complaining that these fatty tumors were just getting bigger and bigger, and we didn't know why. But he was like, I just can't stand it anymore. I'm going to go to the doctor and see if they can't just cut these out. And I said, like, they're not going to cut them out, but you need to go to the doctor anyway. So he got a whole workup. Doctor calls him with the lab results and says, everything looks fine. And what Paul hears is, but something about your hemoglobin. That's what he told me. The doctor said something about my hemoglobin. I was like, oh no, I knew exactly what that was. And I said, get me the labs now. I got them in my hand. And sure enough, he had an elevated hemoglobin A1C, which is a measure of diabetes. So he was pre-diabetic. And I was absolutely aghast, because even though we weren't plant-based, like I really thought we were healthy. I ate lots of fruits and vegetables and just a little bit of meat and dairy. But sure, Paul didn't eat the same thing I did necessarily. But anyway, so I was mortified. And I said, you know what, Paul? I had just seen a documentary about 6 months earlier that showed, it's called What the Health. And it showed that you can reverse type 2 diabetes with a plant-based diet. And I had been an RN for almost 30 years and I had never heard that. And like diabetes in my clinic, I would say 95% of my patients were diabetic. It would stick in my head if I ever had one patient that wasn't diabetic. So yeah, I said, we're going to go on a plant-based diet. Paul didn't fight me. To make a long story short, we switched to a plant-based diet. 4 months later, we repeated his blood work. Diabetes, the A1C level was back within the normal range. We had reversed the pre-diabetes. We both lost 20 pounds. We had more energy. We were sleeping better. Like little things like lower back pain for Paul just started going away. Prostate problems like peeing all through the night, that went away. It's just amazing the things that happen. And so I was just hooked at that point. I started learning more and more about plant-based nutrition. Oh, and I thought the food was going to be awful. I thought like, this is going to be really hard. We're going to really suffer, but we have to do it. I love the food. It was I just couldn't believe how easy it was to lose weight and to feel good and to enjoy the food at the same time. And so I had this epiphany that like, if this worked this well for me, and like, I have a lot of experience in like creating programs for hospitals and stuff to decrease heart failure readmission rates. I thought, why don't I just make a program to help people reverse their chronic disease? And so I started learning more. I got a certification in plant-based nutrition from the T. Colin Campbell Center for Nutrition Studies. And then I went on and got a board certification in lifestyle medicine from the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, which is a physician specialty group that is dedicated to the reversal of chronic disease. And it's all research-based. And so I started teaching classes. I did it live, and then COVID hit and we switched to an online course. So I still have my online course on my website, naturalstateplantabased.com. You can see there. But yeah, I started teaching classes about chronic disease reversal. I have one class on where you get your protein, then type 2 diabetes, then a class on heart disease, and then another one on weight loss. And I have never seen the results in my students. I've never seen anything like this in the regular medical world that I saw in my students that just learned to eat a different way. I've had patients that go off their diabetes meds in 2 months, lose 40 pounds in 5 months, get pregnant when they didn't even think they could get pregnant anymore, cholesterol levels dropping 40 points, reversing the beginning stages of kidney failure. And this is my favorite story from one of my students, Mary. She says, there is a set of stairs I have to climb to my doctor's office. I used to have to go one step at a time and rest between steps. 10 days after starting this diet, I walked up the stairs like a normal person with one foot in front of the other. And this may seem small to others, but it's the best thing that's happened to me. I can't believe my good luck. But it's not luck. That's just what happens when we give our bodies the right fuel. And this is the most fun that I've had my entire career. I absolutely love sharing this information with people. And guess what? Before I discovered the world of plant-based nutrition that was just for me, I was lucky. It was just methodically all laid out for me. I was able, after 30 years of experience in the medical field, I was able to just soak up all this information through Dr. Campbell's program and through the board certification process through the ACLM. But it has changed my life. And I mean, I didn't know any of this information either. I didn't know any more than anyone's watching this today, but I did have a medical background. And so, yeah, it's really exciting me to see people just be able to change the trajectory of their life because they have found the way to treat the cause of their chronic disease. It's the food. So let's start off here talking about nutritional food myths. We're going to learn a little bit about some common misconceptions that keep us from eating the right food. And nutritional food myth number one is I need to eat more protein. And for some reason, protein just feels good to us. We feel like we need to put protein powders on things. We always are worried that we're not getting enough, okay? So let's look at in our culture, when we look at protein, what do we generally think of? We think of meat, dairy, eggs, fish, things like that. That's protein, right? But guess what else is also protein? Plants are protein. So it's like with everything else in life, the more you learn, you realize the version you learned in 5th grade was really oversimplified. And that's what we all were taught as kids, is that like the meat is the protein, the grains or the potatoes, that's the carbs, and then fat is butter, right? But plants, beans, peas, legumes, whole grains, vegetables, fruits, all contain actually carbs, fat, and protein. All right. But it's not the amino acid combination that matters when we eat food. It is also the package that protein comes wrapped in. Okay. So when we get our protein from a cow, for example, like if we're eating beef or cow's milk and dairy, then we are getting a package that is a perfect package for a baby calf to gain 700 pounds in 1 year. So it's very high in saturated fat, very high in cholesterol, wonderful food for a cow. It doesn't translate so well to humans. And we know from multiple studies, a vast body of research, that the vast majority of the diseases that kill us, heart disease and cancer, are caused by high levels of saturated fat and high levels of cholesterol. And these are common in the Western diet. But in societies where they get most of their protein from plants, they don't have these chronic disease. So when we get protein from the plant package, it comes wrapped in fiber and phytonutrients. Phyto just means plant nutrients, which wipe out like all these bad disease processes in our body. And then also antioxidants. Antioxidants is anti-inflammation. And we've found from research that inflammation is the underlying cause of all of our chronic diseases. All right. So let's look at how did we come across this information about protein. The China study, which was done by Dr. T. Colin Campbell, who was the kind of the godfather of plant-based nutrition. He's the one that founded the Center for Nutrition Studies, where I got my plant-based certificate from. But he conducted the China study, which was the most comprehensive study of nutrition ever conducted in medical history. And it followed the dietary patterns of 10,000 subjects in different areas of China with different dietary patterns. And he was able to make 8,000 statistically significant correlations between lifestyle, diet, and disease. But to sum up all of his research, he found that populations that consumed greater than 10% of their caloric intake from animal protein, that they suffered proportionally higher levels of various chronic disease. The higher the amount above 10%, the greater the amount of disease that they had. And the regression line goes all the way to the end. So even the lower you go below 10%, the less disease that you will have. So why is this? Why is there a correlation between animal protein and cancer? Is it and you saw there, all those studies were all different kinds of cancer that take off with higher levels of animal protein. So why is that? First of all, let's understand what makes protein. You might remember this from school, that amino acids are the building blocks of protein. And all protein has about 20 different amino acids. 11 of these our body makes all on its own, but 9 of these amino acids we have to get from plants. And these are called essential amino acids. And so it makes sense. We think like, well, if something's essential, we should want a lot of it, right? Which has been our operating principle for about 150 years. So animal proteins have high levels of all of those 9 essential amino acids. And that's why they're considered the most wonderful form of protein there is, right? But plants do have actually all 9 of those amino acids as well, but some of those different amino acids are in low levels, frequently lysine and methionine. So is that a problem? Is that bad for us if there's low levels of some of those amino acids? Well, let's look at this. What we found through research is that when we get animal, oh, and I want to back up. It's important to understand too that soy protein, although considered, soy is the closest plant product to animal protein because it does have very high levels of protein and very high levels of fat. But soy does have low levels of methionine. Is that a bad thing? No, it's a good thing. And I'm going to show you why. So it was found that animal protein, when we ingest animal protein with those always uniformly high levels of all 9 essential amino acids, it makes our liver kick out high levels of this hormone called insulin-like growth factor 1, or IGF-1. And what IGF-1 does is it makes our body be in the mood to grow lots of blood vessels. So growing blood vessels is called angiogenesis. Angio means blood vessel, genesis means creation of. And so our body's going to be in an angiogenetic mood. It just wants to grow blood vessels. And if you happen to have a little mutated cancer cell nestled somewhere in your body, like in your abdomen, cancer cell walls are covered with IGF-1 receptors, okay? So when we eat animal protein, we kick out high levels of IGF-1. That IGF-1 is going to grow new blood vessels, and it's going to also stimulate those cancer cells to grow more rapidly. If cancer cells get a good blood supply, their tumor doubling rate will increase. And that's what makes the difference between you being 58 years old with cancer, sitting in an oncologist's office discussing your options, or developing a visible tumor when you're 130 years old and 6 feet underground. Okay. We all have mutated cancer cells. That's important to understand. But our diet affects how fast it will grow. So we want to eat to starve cancer. We don't want to feed our cancer cells. And there's a famous Harvard researcher named Dr. William Lee. He says, and he studies angiogenesis or anti-angiogenesis. And he says, tumor cells will never grow beyond 1 to 2 millimeters if they don't get a blood supply. So that's what it's all about, is retracting that blood supply. So if we switch our protein source from animal protein to getting our protein from plants, what can happen with those blood vessels? Guess what? They can just retract because the plants give us low levels of IGF-1, which makes anti-angiogenesis in our systems, basically. But when my husband, I told you that story about he had those fatty tumors that were growing, his belly was getting tighter and tighter. We switched to a plant-based diet. Within 3 months, those fatty tumors started shrinking up and they just went away because we switched the protein source from animals to plants, and plants don't cause tumors to grow. So really interesting. This is a thing that convinced me about plant-based nutrition. So how much protein do we need? So the recommended daily allowance is 0.8 grams per kilogram of ideal body weight. If you are 60 pounds overweight, that 60 pounds of fat doesn't need extra protein. It's only our ideal body weight, or about 10% of caloric intake. So if you're eating 2,000 calories a day, that's 200 calories in protein is what is required. The average female protein allowance is 46 grams a day, and the average male is 56 grams a day, okay? And do you think we have a problem with not getting enough protein? No. The average American gets twice the amount of protein that they need every day. All right. And so this slide is really instructive. See that little red, the red quarter there. This is a consumption, the proportion of US food consumption in calories. 25% of our caloric intake we get in animal protein. Okay. Remember before I said that the US RDA is actually 10%. And that's what Dr. T. Colin Campbell found, is that beyond 10% of caloric intake, chronic disease, including cancer, skyrockets. So beyond 200 calories a day, which is like 4 bites of meat, period. Beyond that, that's where the level at which we get skyrocketing chronic disease rates. So 25% of our diet is an animal protein, 63%, this yellow Pac-Man here, that is all the processed food we eat. So food that is devoid of fiber, like our white bread, our chips, our, French fries, stuff like that. The greens section here, that's the amount of plant food that we get, 12%, but half of the green section in the typical American diet is actually French fries and potato chips. So we only get about 5% of our caloric intake is actually fruits, vegetables, legumes, nuts, and seeds, and whole grains. So that's a very small amount. That's why we're all sick. That's why we spend 85% of our healthcare dollars on the treatment of chronic disease. That's what I did for a living my entire adult life, is just manage the chronic disease. So where do you get your protein? You can get it from the plants. So this is just a slide that shows all these combinations. Get 2 servings of beans a day and you'll be fine. And soybeans are an excellent way to get protein. You don't have to painstakingly combine your protein and add things all up. I have a routine where I put actually soybeans in my smoothie every morning. And then I have some soy yogurt for dessert actually in the evening. I probably get like another serving of beans somewhere else. And I never even think about it. That's just my routine. And then I just eat whatever I want of all the whole food plants that I want. So this is a really easy way to keep up with it. All right, let's talk about nutritional food myth number 2. And that is that diabetes is caused by too much sugar. And so all we need to do is switch to Diet Coke and the diabetes will go away, right? No, we all know that everyone's drinking Diet Coke and diabetes rates just continue to skyrocket. By the time we hit middle age, fully 50% of the population is either diabetic or pre-diabetic. This is at epidemic levels now. And I'm going to show you, okay, the easiest way for me to explain the cause of diabetes is with this video. So watch this. Type 2 diabetes caused by too much sugar. First, let's learn about glucose metabolism. When a healthy person eats, the food is turned into sugar or glucose by the stomach, which then goes into the bloodstream. Glucose is the fuel that we run on. And the glucose in the bloodstream needs to get inside our muscle cells. So the sieve is going to represent the muscle cells so that we have the energy to do what we need to do. And insulin, this spoon, acts as an escort to transport the sugar into the cell. And there it goes right in. See, this is a healthy insulin sensitive cell. How is this process different in type 2 diabetics? In 2006, we developed a technology called MR spectroscopy, which allowed us to visualize the muscle cells of type 2 diabetics. And it turns out they had a fat buildup on their muscle cell walls. And this fat inhibits the ability of insulin to escort the sugar into the cell. See, it can't get through that fat layer. The fat layer makes the cell insulin resistant. So then insulin and sugar are building up into higher and higher levels in the bloodstream. So in a study funded by NIH, Dr. Neil Bernard discovered that a plant-based diet was actually 3 times more effective at improving blood sugars than the conventionally recommended American Diabetes Association lower carb diet. So with low levels of fat in the bloodstreams of the plant-based eaters, fat buildup on the muscle cell walls just starts to melt away and the insulin sensitivity is restored. Type 2 diabetes caused by too much sugar. Let's see if I can get off of there. There we go. So yeah, I think that's a good way to explain the type 2 diabetes sugar myth. And this is fairly recent nutritional research. We have had an explosion of nutritional research in the last 15 years. And that's what's demonstrated that type 2 diabetes is eminently reversible. And you know what? It doesn't even take that long. In a study by Anderson, he showed that insulin-dependent diabetics were able to decrease their insulin requirements by 60% in just 16 days on a plant-based diet. So this is really amazing. So instead of always recommending the low carb diet for the diabetics, we need to move towards the plant-based recommendation. And the American College of Lifestyle Medicine has released a position paper that cites that these and many other studies, there's just untold reproducible studies for this phenomenon. They released this paper stating that physicians have an ethical obligation to treat the underlying cause of the disease when a treatment is known, instead of just treating the symptoms of a disease and watching their patient decline. So we even have a type 2 diabetes patient bill of rights so people can know that they have a right to know about this information. And it's not right to just treat patients with meds when there's a way to treat the underlying cause. It's the food. All right. So myth number 3 is ulcerating about protein and ignoring fiber. It's not, well, not a snappy myth, but anyway. So much of our conventional nutritional wisdom was developed decades ago with a goal of preventing nutritional deprivation. But if we just look around, that's not our problem anymore. Our problem is dying from diseases of nutritional excess and the effects of poor quality refined food diet. So over 97% of Americans, as you saw in that little pie chart there, eat enough animal protein or eat animal protein at levels high enough to make chronic disease just skyrocket, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, all the things that kill us, hypertension. But 97% of Americans do not get enough fiber every day. You only get about 15 grams of fiber. And fiber is important. Why? Because it absorbs all of these toxins. So when we have like too high levels of IGF-1 from the animal protein that we're eating, that's a cancer-promoting hormone. If we have fiber in our gut, the fiber will soak up that IGF-1 and transport it to the toilet. If we don't have fiber, if we eat a typical low fiber American diet, we're getting all these bad hormones circulating in our bloodstream. When they get to our gut, they're just going to soak into that intestinal wall because it's really vascular. So they're just going to soak back into our gut. And guess what? They're going to go all through our bloodstream again and again. Get back to the gut, no fiber. It's just going to soak in. It's just going to stay in our bloodstream. But fiber acts as a sponge to soak up toxins and bad cancer promoting hormones and pull it out of our system. Okay. That's why Paul's fatty tumors were able to shrink up so quickly. Fiber creates a favorable gut microbiome. And we've learned recently that the gut microbiome is what directs all aspects of human health, brain health, psychiatric health, heart health, everything. Fiber reduces LDL cholesterol, just like Karen said, reduces blood pressure, reduces risk of diabetes, reduces inflammation, which is kind of the underlying problem overall, and reduces the risk of the #1 killer of Western civilization, which is heart disease. Fiber is only found in plants, to be clear. No meat, no dairy, no fish, no eggs has ever had any fiber in it. We can only get it from plants. The average intake, I've had patients that are like, they calculate and they're like, oh, I'm only getting 8 grams a day. We want to aim for 40 grams of fiber a day for optimum health. And that is at least more than double of what most Americans are getting. So let's talk about the health benefits of soy food, which is an amazing way to get your fiber. So again, it's got fiber like all legumes do, or like all plants do. It also has that health promoting plant protein profile, too many P's there. So does not increase IGF-1 levels, does not increase our risk of cancer there. It is in fact cancer protective, had a reduction of 12% in breast cancer deaths for each 5 grams of increased soy intake that we eat. Helps with hot flashes. I know this personally. I'm postmenopausal now, and I heard a study. That's why I eat soy twice a day. Only soy has phytoestrogens, plant estrogens, and these estrogens can help postmenopausal women. And they did a study, fed women 2 servings of minimally processed soy, not like soybean isolates, and found that decreased hot flashes by 86%. And that's what it did for me. Like, I don't hardly notice them anymore. And it's important to know that soy estrogens have not been shown to increase cancer risk. In another study, women that switched from cow's milk to soy milk had a decreased risk of hypertension. And this is one of my favorite ones, and you're going to hear more about this from Kathy. But in fact, I learned a lot about the miso from Kathy. But miso is a fermented soy product used in Asian cultures. Was found to confer a 5 times decreased risk of hypertension for the study participants that ate 2 bowls of miso soup a day. Even though it contains sodium, it seems to be hypertensive effective. So that's really important because from a culinary point of view, we get a lot of flavor from sodium. So we can get lots of flavor by using miso paste in our foods and stews and like in the tofu ricotta. And it's only going to help high blood pressure. All right. So let's talk about Karen's changes with her mostly plant-based diet. Cholesterol drop of 20 points. That's because she stopped eating as much food with cholesterol And the plants don't contain any cholesterol. That's a great way to drop your cholesterol. Also, having fiber in your gut will bind with that cholesterol. So there's a famous study called the Portfolio Study by Dr. Jenkins, and he found that a combination of a diet rich in soluble fiber, nuts, plant sterols, and soy protein was found to be as effective as a statin in lowering blood cholesterol levels. And statins are those cholesterol pills that the doctors say, they wish they could put them in the water, but they are not without side effects, and they're not nearly as effective as in decreasing your heart attack risk as switching to a plant-based diet. All right, Karen had improved bone density. Why is this? Let's talk about that real quick. Animal protein actually creates an acid load in the blood, okay? But our bloodstream, our blood, human blood is slightly alkalinic. So the neutral pH is 7. Our blood is slightly alkalinic at 7.35 to 7.45. So when we eat a lot of animal protein, our blood has to buffer that acid load and turn it alkalinic. Okay, so how does it do this? Our kidneys do a lot of that work in buffering the acid, and through this process called, they can start to develop hyperfiltration. And so that is why switching to plant protein is so effective for people with kidney disease. Also, we buffer the acid by pulling calcium from our bones. It's just like when you have reflux or heartburn. What do? You take a Tums because it's calcium. And so that calcium puts out the fire, right? Same thing, pull it out of the bones. And so there's been studies, population studies, that show that the countries with the highest dairy intake, paradoxically opposite of everything we've been taught, countries with the highest dairy intake have the highest rates of hip fractures. Countries that don't traditionally eat dairy have very low rates of hip fractures. All right. Now let's look at diabetes. So everything that Karen was telling you and everything that I've experienced, and we both live in Arkansas. Kathy's in Connecticut with much lower rates of diabetes, but we've got the awesome Southern diet here, which keeps us really busy in the cardiology world. Diabetes is rampant in Arkansas, and especially with these children that Karen's talking about. Karen spends a lot of time trying to make a difference in local public school food systems too. So yeah, in impoverished Arkansas Delta farming communities, see on the side here, this is the Mississippi River. This is where all that good Delta soil is. That's where we grow a lot of the food for the world, right? But ironically, dark on these disease maps, a darker color always means worse. So the dark blue means much higher and higher levels of diabetes. And you can see in these rural farming areas have a lot of diabetes. Today, 14.8% of Arkansas's population is diabetic. That is really high, approaching 15%. And if we include pre-diabetes, 34.6% of Arkansas's population has pre-diabetes. And the complications of these are heart attacks, stroke, amputations, visits to the wound clinic for the rest of your life. So the statistics show that the longer Arkansans eat the food in their environment, the sicker they become. So let's look at this. A study by the Arkansas Center for Health Improvement found that school-aged children have a 26% obesity rate. By the time they get to be in 10th grade, it's 27.8%. By the time we get to be adults in Arkansas, our obesity rate is 38.7%. So the longer we just eat the food around us, the sicker we become. This is an untenable path for us to continue on. And since I've been teaching plant-based nutrition, it's really clear to me that, like, I've seen it over and over, that people can radically transform their health in a very short period of time by eating plant-based food, but it almost always requires an enormous act of the will for them to make most of their foods at home, because healthy food is simply not available in restaurants, not available at their workplace. You have to bring your food from home. And so, like, I'm just like a, idealistic microgreens farmer at my little insulated farmers market that I go to every week, and there's pretty healthy people there. But Karen grows soybeans for the entire world. Okay, she's part of a food system that can affect everyone, right? And so if we could start to get this information to, for example, school children, like she's trying to do, and start to change the actual foods that we feed each other, and we could change the environment. And by changing the environment, everything changes. Otherwise, we're just wringing our hands and agonizing over our patient's diet. Nothing much is going to change if all that's around them is unhealthy food. So here's my school lunch program challenge: switching from pepperoni pizza, which we know is ubiquitous in the school lunch program, to lasagna with tofu ricotta. So if we, and this is my lasagna recipe, it is amazing, let me tell you. And so if we use tofu for cheese, and I think this is something that kids would eat, I think this tastes really good, and I think they would think it tastes good too. So the tofu cheese does not promote heart disease like mozzarella cheese and pepperoni does. It has no cholesterol. It has minimal saturated fat. It doesn't promote cancer because soy protein has that low IGF-1 profile. Okay, does not make that the blood vessels growing issue happen. It has 76% less calories than mozzarella cheese. Remember, Karen lost like 20 pounds without even trying. Soy is cancer protective, not cancer promoting. Soy is lower in fat than dairy cheese. It can promote diabetes reversal because of that. Lowering the fat level in your bloodstream will start to pull the fat off of those muscle cells and undo insulin resistance. And then the phytonutrients in the soy fight inflammation. So this is all a health promoting profile. And soy is so amazing, especially tofu, tempeh, soy yogurt can mimic all sorts of things. This is what Kathy's going to tell you about now. So I want to introduce Chef Kathy Caton Grazzini. I came across her, I discovered her on a podcast. I was watching YouTube one day, and I was just amazed at the level of culinary sophistication that she has. She is basically a gourmet chef, but she is all because of personal family health problems. She is 100% whole food plant-based, and she's able to translate our lots of comfort foods that we've always eaten, just delicious food. She was an amazing cook before becoming plant-based, and then she has brought those skills into the plant-based arena. And so she has a cookbook that as soon as I watched her show, I immediately bought that cookbook. It's called Love the Foods That Love You Back. It's available everywhere. And she's working on another cookbook right now. And she has a website called kathys.kitchenprescription.com. And you can sign up and get her amazing recipes emailed to you. But Kathy is going to show us all the culinary benefits that we can do with soy, the amazing recipes that we can make, and also we can learn more about the health benefits with the miso and things like that. So Kathy, I'm going to let you take it away here.
All right.
All right.
Thank you, Stephanie, for that very generous introduction. And thank you, Karen, as well. I love both of your stories, and it's so much important, vital information for people to hear. I am going to share my screen. I hope, are you guys seeing it? Oops, let's see.
Yes, perfect. First try.
All right. So I'm Kathy Caton Grazzini. Kathy's Kitchen Prescription is my business. I'm a plant-based chef, cookbook author, as Stephanie described. And our journey, my family's journey down the pathway of plant-based nutrition, I guess it started 10 years ago when my 50-something-year-old husband he started developing one problem after another. It's like all his systems were suffering. In 1 year, he had appendicitis, he had a thyroid infection, he had a prostate infection, and all of this culminated with what our doctor perceived as a narrowing of one of his arteries that we watched, and eventually he needed surgery for. And without going into a heck of a lot of detail, I just tell you that that narrowed artery turned out to be a blockage of plaque, huge under his collarbone that feeds the carotid arteries. And he had surgery at a major medical center where we are, and the surgery went sideways, and it resulted in a second surgery that was life-threatening, and we almost lost him. It was he survived, but it was such a trauma that by the time we got home, and now we knew he had atherosclerosis, fairly advanced. So that's the buildup of plaque in your arteries, and heart disease, our #1 killer. We knew that medical procedures and medications could help slow the progression of this degenerative disease, but that he was facing a curtailed lifespan and a future of heart attack or stroke. And the only treatment that could actually, where there was data that of reversing heart disease from Dr. Cornish and Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn Jr. was a plant-based diet. So yeah, we discovered this once we got home from the hospital, madly searching online. And overnight, we flipped our diet just like Karen did and went plant-based to save his life. And my own family history is not much better. Like most Americans, a lot of heart disease, Parkinson's disease, cancer. I'd lost my mother and my sister, and aunts and my grandmother to breast and ovarian cancer. So my family was just all in. And in a very short amount of time, so many of these issues resolved themselves. Giordano's arteries quieted down all this inflammation. His C-reactive protein just went to nil. Cholesterol came down, blood pressure came down. Our A1C was normal, but a lot of other things were not. And all sorts of other niggling problems that we just associated with getting older, middle age, reflux. We were a little bit overweight, but not gravely. But, all of that just evaporated in very short order. And our doctor was amazed, and I was so excited. I went back and got trained in plant-based nutrition at the T. Colin Campbell program and got culinary training through formally at Ruby Cooking School, and did Neil Barnard's Food for Life training to be a culinary instructor, because I was hoping, I just did a whole career change in the hope that I could help other people avoid the trauma that we had gone through, which was pretty devastating and scary. And because there was such vital and vibrant health that just awaited with simple dietary change. And cooking has always been near and dear to my heart. So I'm going to talk to you now about all the many ways that I use soy in my cooking. We probably enjoy soy foods in one form or another every single day because it's the most versatile, ubiquitous ingredients, as I will show you now. So let's see. Using soybeans, like black soybeans or yellow soybeans, mixed with grains, you can do marvelous, flavorful surrogates for chopped meat. So whether it's in the form of burgers or meatballs or meatloafs or meat sauces and meatless, I should say, soy offers wonderful possibilities. And similarly, in chilies and in stews, in stir fries and curries, here we have, the favorite sloppy joes, an all-American favorite that kids love of all ages. And I made this with Karen's black soybeans, and quite delicious. Recently, really enjoyed it. And instead of using the common squishy, insipid rolls, I decided to do it on cornbread, which I made with a soy-based buttermilk, which I'll talk more about in a minute. But this is just one example of one of the many stews you can make with soybeans, very simply. Stephanie talked a little bit about the benefits of miso. I don't use salt in my cooking anymore, because after we've discovered all the benefits of miso paste, these fermented soybean paste, fermented with a koji mold, Aspergillus oryzae, a very simple mold that comes out of Japan and Japanese traditions. You can make, flavor your dishes with wonderful, nuanced flavors. There are all different kinds of miso paste, from dark red miso paste that are more robust and with a stronger, saltier flavor, to very mild white and yellow, light-colored shiro misos that you see here, that I dehydrated into a miso powder that I use as a finishing instead of a finishing salt on certain dishes where they're not moist, and I'm on top of crackers or on top of other dishes, you mix it with a couple of different ingredients to season, and you've got a beautiful surrogate that my Italian-born husband Giordano swears is a great surrogate for Parmesan cheese. So miso powders and miso is just a wonderful way to season your food. Another fermented, really, really healthy food in the plant-based kitchen is tempeh, which originated in Indonesia. And here, soybeans are simply inoculated with a different culture, a rhizopus type of fungus that creates a mycelium net that grows over the soybeans in just a couple of days and binds them into a compact cake. And with tempeh, and you can make all different kinds of tempeh using different combinations of legumes, but soy is the traditional one and the principal one that's most delicious. You steam it and then you marinate it, and you can use it in all different types of dishes like this alternative to bacon in a BLT made with tempeh. There is only one manufacturer in the US that I have discovered, at least in my neck of the woods, that offers tempeh to the home cook. And it's a wonderful opportunity for other producers to get in the game and offer us more delicious and nutritious tempeh. I hope to see that as more and more people start leaning into plants for their nutritional benefit. Soy milk, so easy to make from soybeans, just extracting cooked soybeans and extracting their liquid, their milk. And we use that in our coffee and cold cereals and in our baking, but with a little bit of culturing with lactobacilli, a broad spectrum lactobacilli types of bacteria, you can make a delicious buttermilk. Very mild, creamy and thick and rich. It's really quite delicious, and it just takes a couple of hours. It is easy to do. And if you have a great buttermilk, well, then you can use it in all your batters that you might traditionally have used a dairy buttermilk. The soy buttermilk is wonderful. I've used it here for fritters. These are, if you're an okra fan like we are, makes wonderful fritters that are baked instead of fried. So keeping that fat level, really, really low. And if you're a fan of spicier fare and hot sauce, well, then you can't do better than buffalo cauliflower, which is also made with a buttermilk in the batter used for the cauliflower. And they're being dipped here in a ranch dressing that I'll talk about in a second. And earlier slides, those sloppy joes, that was made with a buttermilk, the buttermilk to make the cornbread. I might have mentioned that, I'm not sure. Pancakes, a Sunday brunch favorite, and these are made with 100% whole grain. So we're going to get as much nutrition out of the grains and get our fiber levels up. And it makes a fluffy and beautiful buttermilk pancakes. And if you love biscuits, and in the South, I assume many people do, as we do up north as well. But this is, you can make drop biscuits using this wonderful buttermilk as well. And this is a baked dish that has a buttermilk crust on the bottom. And then it's got, I'm using different brassica vegetables, broccoli and cauliflower bathed in a white sauce, like a bechamel sauce made with soy milk, and then just very simply baked in the oven. It makes a very tasty, nutritious supper. Similar to buttermilk, a little bit different, also using lactobacilli cultures and other beneficial bacteria as well, is with live cultures is my Greek style soy yogurt, which is easy to do. It just takes 5 minutes on the stove, and then it just incubates in a warm environment for 8 hours or so. And you've got a beautiful, thick and rich yogurt that a spoon will stand straight up in. And that's soy yogurt. And if you have yogurt, you can, enjoy yogurt the way we enjoy dairy yogurt, but it's so much healthier with a better nutritional profile. And you can use it to make dressings, all different kinds of dressings. And this is a ranch dressing that I have that I served in that photo with the buffalo cauliflower. And you can practice what was developed in Turkey and in that whole area of the Levant, a tradition of yogurt cheeses, which I'm using my soy yogurt for. I strained in with just a dense cloth like a muslin, which allows the moisture to leak out but keeps the yogurt in. And it's such a versatile, wonderful thing that one can do, because you can create sour cream and creme fraiche. And if you let it strain a little bit longer, you've got a spreadable cream alternative to cream cheese, which is really quite delicious. And strain it a little bit longer and maybe include a little additional seasoning, and you've got a wonderful alternative to goat's milk chèvre cheese in this soy chèvre, which is just beautiful to serve with crackers and with fruit. And a different kind of cheese that we can make that is beautiful is ricotta, made with soy milk. And we're not using probiotics here. This is just a simple process of using an acid like a vinegar to curdle the soy milk, create curds and whey, and then to press those curds in a form, a ricotta form that I show here. And it makes a kind of, just over a number of hours in the refrigerated, solidifies more into a very lovely, wonderful tasting ricotta cheese, which is beautiful in just enjoyed as it is, but you can also use it in sweets like cannoli, or in Italian classics like cannelloni, or with spinach and stuffed in ravioli, or in lasagna that Stephanie talked about. It's just a really versatile way to, and delicious, authentic way to make a plant-based ricotta. And similar to ricotta is a slightly different process. Different coagulants are used traditionally to make tofu, whether it's Japanese using nigari, which is a combination of magnesium and calcium chloride to coagulate the soy milk and make tofu into a very mild custard in a silken tofu, or the Chinese tradition of using calcium sulfate to coagulate soy milk and make the firmer, from soft to firm and extra firm tofus based on just how much pressing and how much liquid is extruded. And I use silken tofu here to make a really lovely mayonnaise, and so much healthier for us, that you can use on your sandwiches as a spread, and anywhere you use a traditional mayo. So for example, you can enjoy a better stuffings for your sandwiches, and the school kids might enjoy this, Karen, too, in eggless egg salads, which used different types of tofu, from silken to firm, to simulate what an egg salad would be with different seasonings and using the mayonnaise. Or how about a crabless crab salad that spares the endangered species? Crabs are really in trouble right now in our seas and oceans, but we can use hearts of palm to make a really wonderful crabless salad with a homemade Old Bay spice blend and that mayonnaise, which is really quite delicious. And of course, potato salads lend themselves for using this type of mayonnaise. And you can morph that mayonnaise in so many different ways, with sriracha if you like a spicy mayo, or you can create aiolis with extra garlic, warm it up and tweak it a little bit. You've got a hollandaise sauce. So it just can extend itself in so many different applications for different dishes. But potato salad uses just the straight mayo, and noodle salads, pasta salads were, of course, as well. And a little more unorthodox, you may not be thinking of tofu here, but you can make fresh pasta using tofu instead of eggs. And this is 100% whole wheat, using 100% durum wheat flour and silken tofu again to make a beautiful fresh pastas, which you can do sheets for lasagna, tagliatelle, like you'll see here, and you can stuff them and make raviolis or cannellonis, or all the panoply of beautiful Italian dishes. Use your tempeh or your black soybeans to make beautiful meat sauces to serve on top, or in tortellini. So many possibilities that soy gives us in Italian cooking. And then just to finish up here, two of my favorite desserts. One of them is a clafoutis, which you may not be familiar with. This is a traditional French country cooking. It's basically a baked custard, and normally relies on eggs and cream and milk and the usual culprits. But this plant-based clafoutis uses for its custard. It's a baked custard that I use tofu. I use soy milk. I even use soy yogurt, and it's topped here with a little of my soy creme fraiche from that strained soy yogurt. Here, these are Rainier cherries. Cherry is a very traditional way to make this dessert, but any stone fruit. So it's wonderful for summer baking with apricots or peaches or nectarines, these wonderful fruits that are in season now. And soy is a great ingredient to make this dessert. And lastly, for chocolate lovers, you can make a beautiful ganache. This is kind of, ganache is normally made with chocolate and cream, dairy cream. So, high cholesterol, high saturated fat, none of that's here. This is using silken tofu. Again, this ganache is sweetened not with sugar, but with dates, and is just a very simple, all you need is a high-speed blender to whip this up in 5 minutes, and you've got a beautiful dessert that will wow your guests and satisfy your chocolate cravings, I promise you. So, so many of these dishes are available in my cookbook, Love the Foods That Love You Back, and I hope this just gives you some idea of the creativity for the home chef, the opportunities for the enterprising entrepreneur to offer minimally processed. Like all these dishes are low in inflammation because we're not high heating, we're not denaturing soy proteins, we're not doing ultra processed foods, we're keeping things really healthy. And with the types of soy foods that I'm showing here. And it's an opportunity for our growers to offer beautiful soybeans for what I predict will be a growing market of consumers as people lean more into plants, and in dealing with climate change. All these foods have a low carbon footprint relative to animal proteins and meats and dairies. And so I think this could be a wonderful opportunity for our growers as well. And so with that, I thank you, and I turn my screen back over to Stephanie.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, Kathy. This is so delicious, and my mouth is watering. And it's funny. It just occurred to me as you were doing this slide that I am currently in my kitchen right now. I ran out of my soybeans and my soy yogurt like yesterday. And so right now I have my soy yogurt cooking in my yogurt maker, and I've got the soybeans in my Instant Pot. So they should be ready by the time I get done here. Okay, doke. Well, I'm just going to wrap this up here, but yeah, I just wanted to tell y'all about, like learning about the life-changing power of plant-based nutrition has just been an eye-opening experience for me and my family too. And I kind of wish that, I really wish that I could have known all this about 30 years ago, but you know what? If I would have known everything that I know now, in fact, when I was in college, like the China study, I'm so old, it hadn't even been done yet. But if I would have had this information back then, I probably wouldn't have gone into the medical field. And if I would have been like a plant-based chef or an herbalist or something, I wouldn't have any of the experience or the perspective that I do have from working within the medical field. And I think that applies to all of us here on this presentation. We all come from our different respective career paths. But over time, we learned that something just isn't right about the way we're doing things. And a way of looking at this is that we're all kind of on the outer edge of the inside of the different sectors that we're in. And we can make so much more change when we come from knowing all the ins and outs of our industry that we came from. And the most change in society comes not from people that are just solidly in the middle of the establishment, from those that are on the outer edge of the inside, not the bomb throwers from the outside that say everything is awful and you guys are terrible and you should shut it all down. But we're the ones that know how to make change. And everyone, those of you that are watching this today might be one of those people too that's on the outer edge of the inside, and you know that it's time to make some change in the area that you work in. And so all of our areas of expertise, we know enough about them that we don't feel that we need to like protect them or defend them, but we work from within. And but in all these areas, we need to grow beyond the initial useful function that medicine had, that large scale farming had. We need to grow beyond these rules into a new direction that is needed. Oh, and I meant to show all the other slides here, the farming and the chef. And so our what we try to do today is just break out of the silos that we all tend to live in. And in the large scale farming sector, it's not very often that they come in contact with like the plant-based nutrition sector. In the plant-based nutrition, chronic disease reversal, we don't tend to associate with large scale farmers very much. And then we also need to collaborate with the food industry, with the restaurant industry. We need to wrap our heads around trying to do things a little bit differently. And so if we can all work together, the goal is that we can create an environment, that we can change an environment so that when American citizens simply eat the food that is around them, it doesn't make them sick and make them die early. And we have to start somewhere. And I want to leave you with one of my favorite quotes here. But and first of all, I want to thank Kathy and Karen for sharing all of your time and your expertise in making this presentation. But this is such a meaningful quotation that I've heard, and I want to share it with you. When a complex system is far from equilibrium, small islands of coherence in a sea of chaos have the capacity to shift the entire system to a higher order. So thank you very much for listening. I wish you all health and hope. Bye-bye.